Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to be talking about how we can measure the breadth of rallies in the cryptoverse. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. The Las Vegas Bitcoin conference is only a couple weeks away, so I'm pretty excited to go. This will be the fourth one that I've been to. I started going in 2022, 2023, 2024, and now I will be at the one here in 2025. So it's always a fun time. I'm excited to meet a lot of you guys there. This is a recent chart we've added to the website, and it's a chart you've probably seen before, especially when it relates to the stock market. You'll see people on X talk about, this is how many coins are above a certain moving average, right? Above the 50-day moving average, above the 100-day moving average. And I thought it'd be cool to just be able to look at it with crypto as well pretty easily, and now we have it. So what this is showing you is the default, right? Is it's just showing you the top coins that are above a certain moving average. So in this case, we're looking at the coins above the 100-day moving average. Now we're looking at it in percentage terms right now. If we want to look at it in absolute terms, it looks like this. Now you might say, well, hold on a second, Ben. Why does it look like that? Like, why is it that over here in 2014, you barely have any coins above that, right? You only have a few. Well, back then, we didn't have that many cryptocurrencies, right? So one of the reasons for displaying it as a percentage rather than absolute is, back in, especially if you look at, say, like the top 150, we just didn't have that many cryptocurrencies back in 2013, right? There weren't that many cryptocurrencies back then. And so because of that, it can be hard finding, a certain number of coins above a moving average if they just simply didn't exist. So instead, what we can do is look at it in percentage terms, right? So here, like in 2013, you can see there's just, a few coins above their 100-day moving average. I imagine if you go to, say, like a 20-day moving average, it might look a little bit different, right? But you can see in general, there just weren't that many coins. One way to compensate for that is to display it as a percentage, okay? Now, when you display it as a percentage, and you're looking at the number above, say, a 50-day moving average, you get a pretty interesting chart, right? What I like to do right now is I like to just look at the top 100. I don't really care much about the top 150. Like, let's just look at the top 100. And let's look at how many cryptocurrencies are above their 50-day moving average. And let's just look at this cycle. You can see a fairly interesting trend here where, down here, when you're down here, the market tends to bottom out. And then when you come back up to the top, right? When you come back up to the top, it doesn't mean that the market has to immediately top out, right? I'm not suggesting that, but it could start to stall out for a little while, right? It could start to stall out for a little bit when it gets into these ranges up here. At least that's what this cycle has suggested so far. And so you can see that every time it gets up into this range, things kind of slow down a little bit. And you're starting to see that happen again. So it is just something to keep in mind. Going into the summer hasn't always really been that great, at least not the last 2 years, 2023 and 2024. Obviously, if you want to compare 2025 to 2017, the asset class did pretty well in the summer of 2017. But there's also been some differences between 2025 and 2017 as well. So if things do slow down this summer, it could just simply be repeating this trend, right? Where you see the metric kind of go up before the summer, and then, you just see it kind of stall out, and then we wait until later on in the year to potentially pick back up. But we've only just recently got into this range, right? Like, we only just got up here where 97 coins are above the 50-day moving average. So we just got up into the range, and there have been times where we'll spend weeks up in this range before things start to slow down. If you look at the number of coins in the top 100 above their 100-day moving average, here you can see where we are, right? It is moving up pretty quickly, right? It's moving up pretty quickly, but we're still only at 56, okay? If you look at where it topped in the last rally, it topped out once 100% of the coins were above the 100-day moving average. In the rally before that, it topped when it was 99, right? Or that metric topped at around 99. And then in the rally before that, the metric topped out around 87, right? And what's interesting is how Bitcoin, we know Bitcoin went higher, right here, the blue line shows Bitcoin. So then why was the number of coins above the 100-day moving average falling? Well, that goes back to the breadth of the move, right? There was a warning by the asset class that altcoins were starting to become devalued again, and that's, you can kind of see that ultimately Bitcoin followed, even though it wasn't as apparent as quickly as it was for the altcoin market. Okay, and then if you go back and look over here, you can see that there was a lot of altcoins that were starting to struggle to hold these levels. You were starting to trend down here, right? And from 98, really, it probably started with 99, then 98, then 94, right? And even over here, it was in the 90s, then 88, 89, and then down, and we started this this downtrend. And then the market didn't really bottom out until this metric was around 10 or so, 9, 10, 11. So I think this is a really interesting metric because it kind of tells you, it helps you identify when you're at a low, or at least potentially at a low. Obviously, there's no such thing as a sure thing, but it does at least help potentially identify when you are in fact at a low. And it can also help you identify when the market might be in the process of cooling down. And again, it's true that it stayed up in this range for a while, just like it stayed up in this range for a while. But you can see that the breadth of the move was already starting to collapse before Bitcoin really went down back in 2023. Same thing happened in 2024, right? I mean, the breadth of this move was really collapsing despite the fact that Bitcoin was putting in lower highs. You could watch this and maybe even get insight into the idea that Bitcoin wouldn't put in a higher high back then because the breadth in this move was just simply going down. Okay, so right now we're seeing it go up. We're just at 11 on April 18th. Now we're at May 13th and we're at 56. You're likely going to see this metric continue to go up, would be my guess. Just because you're going to see more of the altcoins. As those 100-day moving averages continue to come down, it's going to be easier for the prices to go above the 100-day moving average, because again, moving averages by definition are just a lagging indicator, and because we just had a lot of negative price action for several months, a lot of those moving averages for some of those altcoins are still potentially trending down, and so this will likely continue to trend up, would be my guess. If you look at this metric in 2019, you can kind of see what it did, right? I mean, when it was putting in these lower lows, it was in fact trending, Bitcoin was trending down as the breadth was collapsing. There was a lower low. This is what I find really interesting, what I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about. There was a lower low here by Bitcoin, right? What was interesting back then is that despite that lower low in 2019, the number of coins above their 100-day SMA continued to actually go up. So what that suggested back then, right, was that altcoins were starting to outperform Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin went lower, but just because Bitcoin didn't mean all the altcoins were getting necessarily as annihilated. Back then, we had seen quantitative tightening in. We were in QE. So while Bitcoin went a little bit lower, a lot of the altcoins continued to do okay. So just keep an eye on this. It is starting to trend up here. My guess is it's likely going to continue to trend up. If you look at it with a 200-day moving average, it looks like this. Okay, it's currently at 51 of the top 100 cryptocurrencies are currently above their 200-day moving average. Also, you can view it through the lens of the bull market support band, right? You can look at it as the 20-week SMA, like the number of coins in the top 100 that are above their 20-week SMA. You can see actually it just bounced at essentially the same level it bounced at last year. So September 24, this number bounced at 28, and then here, April 2025, it bounced at 27, right? So this is why I think this indicator could be pretty useful, because it might be one of those things. It's kind of like an RSI, kind of visually, because we know the RSI kind of bottomed out at the same level too. But it shows you it shows you different insight into the cryptoverse. It shows you, how many coins are actually partaking in the trend versus how many are not. And so do keep an eye on this one. We also have the same thing for the 21-week EMA. Now this one, it did go a little bit lower. But yeah, I mean, I think that this is a really good indicator to get an idea of really what's going on in crypto. And you can also see where these major bear markets are, right? How the number of coins in the top 100 above their 21-week EMA just kind of collapses in these bear markets. And then the Bitcoin bottom has occurred around the time where you only have, a couple of coins above their 21-week EMA, right? I mean, like, look at that. Look how good that would have timed the bottom down here. Look how good it would have timed the bottom last cycle. So if we're already in this downtrend, if this comes down here, which it probably will at some point, I would guess by the end of 2026, then that could be another buying opportunity for crypto. So we've added the chart to the website. I just want you guys to be aware of it. I'm probably going to reference it occasionally, especially when I do some like long dubious speculation videos or Bitcoin dominance videos. You'll probably see this chart. So just know that it exists. You can also look at the same thing, but looking at how many are actually below it, right? So you're just flipping the chart. But anyways, I think this is a really cool indicator. I wanted to add it. I really wanted it added to the ITC website for a while. And now it's finally added on here. So make sure you guys check it out. We do have, you can get the ITC subscription, links in the description below. We saw the sale going on. There's also a free tier. There's also a free tier where you can get access to several charts. And all you have to do is provide the email address. So make sure you guys check that out. I will see you guys next time.